So our next recipient will be Donnie Maynard, introduced by Brad Taylor.
Hi, Jamie had told me, my name is Brad Taylor, as he introduced. I asked about the range of how long to talk. He said, I said 60 seconds to 30 minutes. He said, yeah, good range. And I still don't know what that means. But you guys are incredible speakers. I'm following a 600-win basketball coach up here, and it's a little intimidating, but it's also fun, a great honor at the same time. So currently, and it's good to see some baseball people in the room. I'm the Spalding baseball head coach, varsity head coach. It's good, really interesting. I'm an Oyster River guy. I played on Don Maynard. I was the distant fifth starter on Don Maynard's 95 and 96 state title teams. And really interesting to hear some, and played baseball at Oyster River. Coach Baganzi, I never heard the name before, but I grew up, and Mike Whaley's here. I grew up with some of the Oyster River baseball players, my predecessors, losing to those Woodsville teams in state championship games way back. Really cool to see that come full circle right now. I had never heard the coach's name before today. And when I was coaching at Portsmouth Christian and won a state title about 10 years ago, two of the Oyster River guys are on my staff, and their battle cry that nobody else cared about is, we got to win this for those Woodsville games we lost. And nobody else cared. But really interesting, the standard up against, and the talent in this room today is overwhelming. I think Don Maynard is one of the most overlooked, great basketball coaches that the state has ever had. And his name is spelled wrong right there, which proves my point even more. I'm gonna leave it at that. He is not, and I had all these things I was going to say, and then you guys have all brought up so many good points today. He is not old school, in my opinion, and I think he would agree with me. He was not intimidating. He was not a yeller. He would walk around maybe it's kind of how I coach these days. He would have his hand on his head, and when he got mad, he just kind of would go like this, and then he'd turn around and just walk away. I don't think he ever got it. Did you ever have a technical foul in your life? Okay. He spent his time corralling us. And true to form, I had no idea he was selected to be here today. Didn't know anything about it. And about a month ago, and I still have a relationship into adulthood. I saw him last summer. It's texting all the time. He said, I gotta come by your work and ask you something. And I was like, can't be a phone call, can't be a text. Like, that just doesn't happen in this day and age. And so I put the phone down, and I'm just sitting there. He had to come over in like 2 days. And my brother and father know of him well, and we're all sitting there saying, this is not going to be good. Like, something is wrong. Like, he's retired. He's got a healthy, happy family that I know of. Like, everything's good. So by the time he came into work, my dad had this plan of, when Dawn shows up, everybody clear out of the office, and he's just going to talk to Brad and ask him something. And I was like, okay. I thought I was going to be a pallbearer. I thought the end was coming for some reason, which I'll be happy to do someday, but thankfully, it was about this, right? And true to form, he doesn't broadcast it. He's not on social media. He, in my opinion, was the coach of the 90s, and I still call it Class I. I got a tough time. I'm a D1 head coach, but I like to say Class L. I always wanted to be a Class L head coach. It's tough to make that transition, but he took down legends in the 90s. And I know in 95 and 96, we were considered the most talented team. But actually, I wouldn't even say 95, just in 96. In 95, we took down, I saw somebody like Coach Metcalf from the first class of these inductees. A lot of you were probably there for that game. And but his players have gone on to be very successful in life. He set the example. He allowed us to be idiots 10 years before the Red Sox did, right? He let us be who we are. And 95, I still credit what he allowed us to do for beating Coach Metcalf when Greg Friel showed up with a razor before the game and said, we're shaving mohawks. We're shaving mohawks. And starts doing it to himself, and then all of us were joining in. I didn't have much more hair than I do now, so I was all for it. I didn't care. And I'm looking over at Coach, and Coach is like, what are you guys doing? We got a game to prepare for, but we knew Lebanon like the back of our hands. We knew the scout, like it was all done. But one of the main reasons, it's not just that he allowed us to do it, he partook in that. Those of you who might have been at that game. Now, he didn't go straight 1 little inch up front. He shaved hair off his head. And I didn't even know we were doing it. So nobody in the stands knew. We thought on, Jerry Friel's home court, we thought we could embarrass our parents and our girlfriends and everybody else as quickly as we could, relax everybody. And Lebanon didn't know what the heck was going on. We all looked like a band of idiots. We were misfits. But we were relaxed, chilled, ready to go as massive underdogs, in my opinion. But his greatest coaching job, and he might come up here and talk for about 4 minutes, so I'm going to talk just a little bit longer than that, by the way. He's so humble. His greatest coaching job was his 92 team, right? And I don't know how many of you guys might have been there for that. Some people will say, well, he had an exchange student from Ireland, on and on and on. I don't care. That Conval team was so loaded that year. A lot of you probably know that. And he had a point guard on that team that he helped turn into a great leader who happened to just leave planet Earth a month ago to the International Space Station, Scott Poteet, right? The greatest leader I've ever seen in my life. Like to be an Air Force pilot. And to start of that game, a lot of you were probably there for it, Orchard was down 8-0 before you could blink. And so my core team, we were in 8th grade. And we sat there, and then Coach calls that first timeout, and we just sat there and said, 4 years from tonight, we're getting him a state title. And we had watched almost all of his games that year and loved it. I mean, the Oyster River home court advantage is not what it is now. There's no home court advantage anymore like it was. Intimate gym. But we never really noticed Coach Maynard. Like, he was never the show. But how he calmed his team down when we were sitting there in 8th grade in total awe of that Conval team, and then they came back and won in overtime, we sat there and said, well, that's a guy we're ready to play for. Like, it was incredible coaching. They were so undermanned compared to that team. And so to harp on how humble he is, right? So before I got my current Spalding job, I was on the Oyster River baseball staff. Coach Maynard was still a PE teacher in school, head of the PE department, and he was set to retire last year. I'm losing track of time. So 2 years ago, nobody knew he was retiring. He's still there. He's a teacher. And at Oyster River, after tryouts, we always have a basketball tournament. And just to kind of mix it up, we're stuck in the gym all winter like you guys. And pick captains, have the coaches play. And so we're sitting down there and happen to be sitting down under the state championship banners. And I don't think I'm cocky, but compared to Coach I am, I just said, oh, you guys know, like, I played basketball and I was on 2 of those state title teams. And of course, the first thing they say is, oh, were you from the 70s? I'm like, no, I'm not quite that old. I'm like, no, 95, 96. And they're like, oh, cool, and they look over at the 1,000-point scores and they see Keith Friel and Craig Friel, of course. And as Coach would say, if we're one Keith Friel sprained ankle from possibly having 3 championships in 94, but stronger as a team, we were ready for the next year. But anyway, so there were 5 varsity basketball players that I was talking to 2 years ago, and this conversation, and they looked at me, and I thought they were joking, and they said, who was the coach of that team? And I said, come on, like, seriously? They had this guy as a teacher, so I thought they were screwing around with me. And they're like, no, seriously, like, who was your coach? Like, did he also win in 92? Because, like, all those were close. I said, yes. Like, how do you not know who the coach is? And they didn't. They had no idea. I said, he's a teacher in your school. And they kind of thought about it, and they said, wait a second, like, Mr. Maynard? I said, yes. Like, who would be humble enough in this room? Because it certainly wasn't me. It took me 2 seconds to say I was on part of those 2 championships. He had them in class for years, and they had no idea what a legend he was, winning 3 out of 5 titles. No idea. If that doesn't sum him up, I don't know what will. But he helped me get my coaching job now. I'm a baseball guy. Basketball he'll be the first to tell you, was my distant second sport. But he got me to work hard. He wrote me letters of recommendation for every baseball job I've ever gone for. It was no question. He was a great AD and a great coach. But he was not a yeller. He was not old school. And he'll tell you he could not coach these days. But I like to think I'm quite a bit like him and surviving and doing okay. No, I'm forever thankful for the example that he set for all of us to follow. And a lot of us are doing different things. There are several of us who have coached, no doubt about it. It's just an honor, and it's overwhelming to be up here right now. And say nothing else, he turned us into a family. Nothing that probably all of these legendary coaches today that people wouldn't say about. And the family sitting around that circle, there's pictures of him in '95. I mean, the pictures are grainy, like it was a while ago now. But he's holding I think Trevor, with his partial mohawk going, right? And the kids were around us all the time growing up. And they became family. Now they could shove me into a pit. And I mean, they're all bigger and stronger than us, but they were little kids he let us bully his kids, crying out loud. 2 and 4 years old, roughly at the time. But it was family. He fostered that culture. Culture is the word I heard once already, and that's what coaches have a really tough time these days implementing culture. There's so many distracting things going on, and it's very difficult to pull off what he did, especially with our two championship teams that we had. We grew up together, kindergarten together. He knew we had this core coming into high school of good basketball players, but we had egos too. I'd be lying if I said there weren't parent meetings due to we were difficult at times. He threw us in the fire. As sophomores in '94, we had 4 sophomores and a freshman in the starting lineup. As you can imagine, we got off to a very rough start that year, but he had our backs. And I know that got referenced tonight too. If you're a coach, you want to make sure the AD and the principal and the admin have your backs. He always had the backs of the players, right? The coach's job is to have the backs of the players, right? We're the intermediary of that. And we were not winning games until end of January that year, with all these kids in the lineup, and we had a lot of seniors on the bench. But he always believed in us. And by the time our heads would inflate a little bit as we got into our junior year and senior year. I mean, we lost 3 games after February of '94, probably like the entire rest of that run. And he kept us in check, but he didn't have to do it by yelling and screaming at us. He found ways to motivate us to put our heads down and work hard and really become a family. So it is an unreal honor to introduce Coach Don Maynard with an N.
A little like Rodney Dangerfield, the name spelling and stuff.
Just got to check the ring and make sure it's right.
Yeah, check the name on it too. It's funny, Dave calls me Donnie. No one in New Hampshire had ever called me that. The only reason why Dave did is because I've known him since our college days. We have a couple of friends in common, which, to be very honest, leads me into the first thing I wanted to say. So Dave calls me. Well, first of all, I want to thank the New Hampshire Basketball Coaches Organization for this honor, because it's not something I ever in a million years expected to happen. I don't know who nominated me, doesn't matter, but I just can't thank you enough. Jamie, Dave, Megan's over there, anyone else that was involved. So thank you guys. It's just, again, I can't even believe it. I can't believe I'm standing here. So as I started to say, Dave called me this summer. Of course, I never pick up my cell phone. He left a message, so I had to call him back. And, again, because we've had some, common friends, whatnot, I was absolutely convinced the reason why he called was to tell me, hey, so-and-so died. Just died. I didn't think it was anything like this. So he was, hey, you're in the Hall of Fame. So it's okay, if you say so. And then, I've never been one to talk about myself. I've always been a firm believer that, if you have to talk about what you've done, probably haven't done that much. So downplay this award. Didn't want to make it like, too big a deal. And then kind of made the mistake of looking at the website. And I saw the names. I saw Mike Lee. I saw Lang Metcalf's name, Dan Parr's name. And then I got Dave's email about the people that are being inducted. And there's Ed Claw. It's like, oh my God, these guys are legends. You know, I'm thinking to myself, Dave, I think you made a mistake. You got me mixed up with someone else. You know, I'm not in this category. These guys are, you know, had so much success. And to just take a lot of pride in this. And, you know, fellow coaches, you know, like Brad was saying, you know, you hear so many stories and so many things that people have in common. You know, like I've heard Buddy's name before, never met him, but I know what he's accomplished. You know, obviously I know Dave real well. We'll talk about Dave a little bit more here in just a second. And, you know, again, the commonalities, you know, the amount of time that they put into their programs to be successful. It's just, to be a part of all that is just, it's just almost surreal to me. I'll try not to bore you with too many stories. I can tell you one real quick about my first my first scouting trip as varsity coach at Oyster River. Went to Pembroke. Pembroke was playing Lebanon. So it was Ed versus Lang. And no one really knew the connection that I had to the Metcalf family. I mean, Terry Metcalf, Lang's daughter, was my wife's best friend in high school. Her future husband, Keith, who's at Keene State, was my roommate in grad school. I'd been to Lang's house a few times after games on Friday nights, which that in itself is legendary. So anyway, I'm there watching the game, and I saw Beverly sitting about 3 rows up behind the bleachers, and thought, or behind the team bench, I'm sorry. And I thought, well, that's a little, strange. Usually she's right, I thought closer. So the game's going on, of course, is really close, competitive. Both Ed and Lang all over the refs. I think one of the refs may have been Red Murray, I think. All of a sudden, the ball goes against Lang, and he turns around, he kicks a chair into the bleachers about 2 rows in front of Beverly. I thought, well, that's why she's sitting 3 rows back. No technical foul. No T was called. So I'm at Merrimack Valley that season, coaching. One of my players, Daryl Briggs, gets right here in front of the bench. Gets knocked into the bleachers. Luckily his teammates caught him and whatnot. I jump up. Steve Rossetti, some of you may know Steve Rossetti. He's the trail official opposite side of the court. Has no idea what I've said. Tees me up. The other referee's like right there, but there's Steve down there, and he decides to tee me up. And I'm thinking to myself, Lang Metcalf can kick a chair into the bleachers. All I did is jump up, put my hands up, and I get teed up. So that's how I got my first tee. Yep. I want to thank Brad for introducing me, for giving up his Saturday to be here. I know he's got better things to do, but I appreciate it. To me, Brad just epitomizes everything I wanted to see in an Oyster River basketball player. He was always 100% effort, selfless, always put the team first. He only cared about one stat, whether we won or whether we lost. That was it. Didn't care, if his name got in the paper or not, as long as the team was doing well. And that's what I wanted every one of our kids to be like. Every one of the kids that ran our program. He was like the basketball version of a dirt dog. The Dustin Pedroia, I guess, of our basketball team. And I've seen him coach a little bit now in baseball, and I would love to think I could be around long enough that someday maybe I can introduce him into his baseball coaches Hall of Fame, because he'll be there if he stays with it. He's just that good. One last thing about Brad. To this day, I don't know how he's still with us. We were playing Bishop Brady in their beautiful gym that they have. This was just after they played that stupid song, Welcome to the Jungle, or whatever it's called. And Brad, being Brad, is going 1,000%. All of a sudden, he dives for a ball, goes head first into their stage. To this day, I don't know how he didn't kill himself. Not to be too dramatic. But that's the type of player he was. And again, that's what, I loved coaching those players, and I wanted every player to be like that. I got to thank my wife, Cheryl. I wouldn't be standing here right now if she had been supportive like she was all the years that I was off coaching. Initially, we were living in Northwood, and I was working at Oyster River. We were on the far side of Northwood. If you guys know the area at all, it's about at least 20 minutes difference if I was on the Durham side as opposed to the Pittsfield side. But all the time that I would be leaving the house to go off and do, AAU, summer basketball camps, clinics, you name it. We had young kids at home, and Cheryl had to man the fort. And, if she wasn't supportive of me coaching, then it wouldn't have been happening. So, Cheryl, I know you didn't expect it, but I got 3 kids sitting back here right now. They all played basketball for me in one way, shape, or form. The 2 boys played, obviously, with me with the varsity. I got to assist Dave one year when my daughter was a senior. I don't know how it was with other coaches whose kids played for them. I've heard different horror stories, and maybe it's selective memory on my part. I don't know, but I have nothing but the best memories of coaching my kids in basketball. Even whether it was a road trip to AAU, riding with my daughter to Philadelphia for a one-day basketball tournament of all things. Those are just things that I'll never forget. And as proud as I am to be standing up here accepting nomination to the Hall of Fame, nothing makes me prouder than seeing what they've become. So, Trevor, Stephen, Riley, thank you for being here. I think an example of what kind of kids they are the people that they're choosing to lead their lives with. My son Trevor's wife Lauren's back there, and my soon-to-be son-in-law Kyle is back there. They actually flew up from Florida this morning to be here. I told them not to because they're getting married next summer. They can save the money. But they're here, and then more importantly than any of them, my granddaughter Lainey. So you guys, I appreciate your support all these years, and I couldn't be prouder of you. Brad's got a connection to my family in more ways than one. He mentioned, seeing my kids in the gym all the time. They were. When Stephen was first born, I was going to practice with him in a backpack. But they basically were living in the gym once they got old enough. Never forget a game we had in our, what I call the old gym, our new gym. What I call a new gym now, it's almost 20 years old, but I'm aging myself. But we were in our old gym, really, really tiny team room, all serious. I think I made Bishop Brady at home, I'm not sure. I'm trying to get the kids all fired up. They're quiet, they're listening. All of a sudden, there's a pounding coming from inside one of the lockers. Like, pounding. Like, get me out of here. I don't know how old Trevor was this time, but Brad and his friend Dan had locked Trevor in the locker. And he was in there, I don't know how long, 5-10 minutes, and my speech was almost done. We're ready to head on the court, and all of a sudden, I hear that, so we had to let him out. Anyway, and then this time he broke his tooth because Amos Goss was chasing him around the locker room, and he went head first into the floor. All kinds of great memories. So anyway, I'd like to thank Dave Nichols for actually hiring. I think I want to thank Dave for hiring me. I think, but he hired because of Dave, and that's the reason why I ended up there. He did force me to coach softball for 3 years. I don't think that's fair. It's not the softball program that it is now. For a long time, I think I was a leading coach with total number of wins. We had 4 one season. So anyway, he also did prepare me for all the ex-coaches that would sit on the opposite side of the gym. Oyster River, I think, leads the country in former coaches because they're all there. And I didn't realize how much knowledge a person could gain by coaching in the 3-4 house league. The amount of experience they could get and what they could take from that, and qualify them to do my job, it was impressive. And then, if you won the 3-4 house league, forget it. Go to the school board, tell them you should be the next coach. So anyway, Dave, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity way back when, and I think I've done okay with it. So, as far as coaching goes, I got so many good memories, but I feel really fortunate to have coached so many just great people, great kids. They come to the high school, and they'd already been to our basketball camps, they'd already been to my clinics and whatnot. I used to love having little kids come into our locker before a game, and they'd sit up on the lockers, and they'd listen to the pregame talks, and You know, they go stand out on the court, they line up for the, you know, the big kids, the varsity kids to run out. To me, those are the best. I used to love that. But I thought, you know, coached some fantastic people. Seen a lot of them go on and have a ton of success in their lives. You know, Brad's a good example. He you know, he's, I don't know if it's okay to call it CEO, owner of your company or whatever, but he's got at least 20 full-time employees. I got another kid who owns Elephantine in Portsmouth. If you haven't been, you should go. It's probably the best bakery / coffee shop in Portsmouth. Of course, I'm a little biased. I got another kid who just had his first storybook published. So he's a storyteller, and he just had a book published. He's pretty proud of that. I got another kid who was voted the #1 tattoo artist in the state. And then, yeah, I had a point guard on that '92 team, Scott Petit, who just was the pilot on SpaceX. So I guess he's doing okay for himself. I don't know. I'd like to think, though, if I had any role or if I influenced, you know, those kids in any way and somehow help in their success, then I'm thrilled. Thrilled to death if I influence them in any way to help them along with the lives that they now lead. You know, when I was coaching, I always, you know, part of it's maybe the teaching side of me. I don't know. But to me, a good athletic program, I don't care what the sport, should be an extension of the classroom, because the lessons that you're going to learn on or within a good program, the life lessons, they're going to help you be successful. You know, I don't care if it's, you know, hard work, you know, setting goals, you know, working together, making sacrifices, and maybe the most important thing is just learning to deal with adversity. You know, very, very few people get to end their season with a win. It just doesn't happen. You're going to deal probably with a loss, most likely. You're going to have some tough losses as you go along. Things are going to be hard. And how do you deal with it? And to me, that's going to help a kid get ready for life. And, you know, that's something that I like to think I helped, you know, promote as I was coaching for all those years. I don't know. I wanted my players to feel like they were part of something special. You know, I wanted them to not act cocky, but I wanted them to be able to walk down the street and, you know, take pride in the fact that they played Oyster River basketball. And, you know, I think as the, you know, again, as the years went on, and we, you know, I saw kids that were in kindergarten, I handed them their first basketball at camp, and then all of a sudden they're coming to the high school and playing for me. To me, that was what coaching was all about. And I think, you know, you'd be hard pressed nowadays to find that. Dave actually commented earlier today about the number, what is it, 3.5 years coaching now before people get out. And, you know, based on the last couple of years that I was at the high school, just teaching, and seeing the number of coaches that came and went, yeah, it's staggering. It's sad to see that. So, you know, I try to treat every kid as equally as I could. Try to hold them to the, you know, the same standards, the same expectations, the same rules. It didn't make any difference if you were the leading scorer or the so-called last kid on the bench. You know, every kid I wanted to have a role, and I wanted to feel like they were contributing, and I wanted them to feel like they're, you know, what they were doing was important to the success of the team. So that was, I mean, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I mean, you know, I got some funny things, I guess, and some memories I won't forget. I don't know if I should say this, Ed, because I don't want to bring up bad memories for you, but I'll never forget, you know, seeing the headline in the Concord Monitor the day after we played Pembroke on Valentine's Day. I believe they call it the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. I think we lost by 45, 48, something. And we ended up playing Ed's team exactly 2 weeks later in the semifinals of UNH, and we beat them by 1. And I don't know how. Certainly wasn't coaching, but I must have had some kids that played hard, because you know, that was one you don't forget. Brad mentioned playing and beating Lebanon in the state championship, and again, because of, you know, my connections to Lang and his family, that was pretty special. You know, knowing how competitive that game was. You know, we were actually getting that Conval game, which, by the way, they had a 6'8" exchange student as well. So the exchange students kind of played off against each other a little bit. We were down 18-3, and that kid Scott, the pilot on SpaceX, I'll never forget, we're down 18-3, big crowd. You know, they're going nuts, we're getting our rear ends kicked. And he walks over to me and he goes, "This is effing awesome." And I didn't have time, you know, then to say, "Scott, we're down 18-3." But just the type of kid he was, you know, and, you know, the kids fed off his energy, and we came back and we won in overtime. It was pretty cool. There's others. I don't want to bore you guys. It's getting late. We should get going. I had a parent trying to defend a kid once who was going to get suspended for breaking our alcohol policy. Didn't understand why there was a problem with the kid rinsing his mouth out with beer because he had dry mouth. Did not understand why he was getting suspended for that. Another parent who was mad at me because I did not accept or the fact that their kid was going to be missing every Tuesday and Thursday night, whether it's a game or practice, because they had trombone practice. And they couldn't understand why I had an issue with that. So, I don't know. You know, that's it. I'll stop. So, you guys, I can't tell you how much this means. Dave, all you guys on the
It's only gonna mean something if this name's spelled correctly.
I'm used to that. So, anyway, thank you all. Thank you very much.